So today we're going to cover in Data Central the beginning steps of the scheduling process. There is some maintenance that has to take place on a regular basis. Two of those pieces are employee linking, which can be found under the Labor and Scheduling folder in your Data Central menu. And we'll also be covering employees. So today we're going to kick off with the employee links to POS. So this activity basically synchronizes employee data for those employees who clock into the POS system. It is also a means for initially creating and populating employees with Data Central. They must be linked to their Data Central profile for accurate labor reporting. Now, in the future, we will utilize Data Central for payroll and labor purposes, so the importance of them being linked is going to matter in the future. Also, in order for you to schedule somebody, those individuals will need to be linked as well. Once you click on the employee links to POS, you will receive a start screen with filters. Here you can search an employee by name, or you can just leave this blank. You can also search for those employees that already are linked, or those employees that are not linked, or you can just view all POS employees. Once you've selected your options in your filter, you'll navigate to Task and select Next. You'll notice that there are two different sections of employees. You'll have the POS employees and you'll have the DC employees. For a better view, I'm going to navigate to View and deselect the To Do in the menu. All of the POS information that is housed inside of your POS system gets sent into Data Central. So everything you put into POS when you enter a new employee, all of that information is automatically brought over to Data Central. You'll notice down at the bottom left that it will show, for instance, on this particular restaurant, that there's a record one of 3,490 employees. Please note that the reason there's so many employees is because it also takes back into consideration all of the employees that were in the system in the Vision Bean stores as well. I recommend the first thing that you do is navigate to the POS type, select the filter, and filter to just the Expient system. As you can see, this will narrow that record to one of 107 employees and will allow you to navigate your employees much easier. Additionally, you can navigate to your task, display options, and look at only POS employees, because this will be the only section where you'll actually be linking employees. Once in the POS employees, you'll notice that you have a number of different columns. The first is the POS type. Again, ensure that you're working within the Expient system. Next will be the POS code associated with that employee. In order to give yourself a cleaner screen, some of these items you can move out of the way, such as POS code. You'll have last name of employee, first name, social security number can be moved off of the screen. Birthday can be moved off of the screen. Payroll ID can be moved off of the screen. Gender and ethnicity can be moved off of the screen. This will then leave you with a cleaner screen to work with. You'll notice that there's a combination of linked and unlinked employees here. The way that you know an employee is linked is their name will appear in the POS main data band, and their name will also appear in the linking information. However, you'll notice for other employees that while the name appears in the POS main data, there is no name in the linking information. To do the initial linking of each employee, it's best to sort by those employees who have not yet been linked. Once you have done your sort, you can then click to the left of the POS type, and once you see an arrow here, you can then navigate up to Actions, which falls under the task, and then create a new employee and link to the POS for that employee's name. Once you have linked that employee, you can then save your work. All employees in Data Central that you plan to schedule must be linked. Even if you do not plan to schedule an employee and they are a terminated employee who currently are not linked, please do take the time to go ahead and link that employee by navigating to Actions, creating a new employee, and that employee is then linked. Once you have linked employees, you can save one at a time, or you can save after you have linked multiple employees. You do have to link each employee one at a time. You cannot link multiple employees at the same time because it will then try to link all employees to the same person. Once you're done, save your work, and that will be the final steps of linking employees. This does have to take place, and it's just a general maintenance. So when you hire a new employee, a step would be to come into linking employees and go ahead and link that employee. Additionally, aside from employee links to POS being a regular maintenance fee that has to take place when you hire a new employee, you will also want to review the employee's information. So once an employee has been linked, you can then enter into the employee's activity. This activity provides the ability to add or update employee personnel information. While you have the ability to add, I'm going to ask that you do not add employees in here, that you only add those employees through your POS system, and then that employee will automatically import into the system once you've added them. It also allows you to update employment status, how they are scheduled, and payroll status. These are all pieces I will cover during the training today. An employee begins its life when it is entered into its home store. Once an employee has been created or hired, all relevant employee information is pulled over from the POS system and imported into Data Central directly. While employed, the employee status can change from active to inactive or terminated. Furthermore, employees have a home store, which is the default store where they are first hired. Data Central recognizes if an employee's information already exists by its Social Security number. So it's pertinent that when you enter that employee into your POS system that you ensure that you enter in the accurate Social Security number. Employees can also be borrowed, which means once they have been hired, they can work in another location for any restaurant. Finally, the employee life cycle ends when they are terminated. If an employee is borrowed and they are transferred to your restaurant as a permanent employee of yours, that transfer in Data Central has to be done by either the administrator or your multi-unit leader. On the start screen, you can set any of the start screen filters. If you want to be able to look for employee by name or status or type, mode, borrowed, or linked. Or you can leave blank to bring up a complete list of employees. Once you have selected your filters, you'll select Next. And this will bring up your list of employees. In order to view in full screen mode, you can navigate and deselect your to-do and menu. Again, there's information on the main screen that you don't necessarily need to have to give yourself a better view. Feel free to drag away the type, the telephone, exempt, and this will allow you to be able to see a better view of your employees. When you select an employee, you'll notice that they have additional information on the main screen. So for example, the last name and the first name to be able to sort that individual, or just by last name or first name. Additionally, you have the ability to hide employees here, much like you can hide items in your count template. And then you have the status that recognizes if this employee is active or terminated. This is the original status that was pulled over from the POS system. You do have the ability to modify this status in Data Central. It will also recognize if an employee is borrowed, and will let you know if a particular employee is actually linked to the POS system. In order for an employee to be scheduled, they must have a check mark next to their name to be able to be scheduled. As you can see, the employees I linked today during the employee linking piece do not yet have the mark in scheduled. In order to ensure that they can be scheduled, you can simply just put a check mark in there and then save. And this will allow them to then appear on your schedule. This is one of the maintenance pieces that has to happen after you link an employee in order to schedule them. In the future, we'll cover web-based scheduling, and then it shows and demonstrates if an employee is a manager. So for the purpose of today, I'm going to use an example of an hourly employee and an example of a salary employee. All right. In order to access an employee's information, you can highlight that employee by clicking to the left of their name, navigate to Task, and then select Modify. Once you have accessed the employee's information, you'll notice that you have a number of different bands at the top. The main band that you will work in is the primary area to control employees' information. If you want to change an employee's status, you can navigate to the Task tab, go to Actions, and change their status, and you have the ability to change their status from active to either terminated or inactive, or if that employee is terminated, you can then remark that employee as active. When you change status, you do have to provide a reason that you're changing status. Additionally, if you want, you can enter in additional information. Do note that DC does not write back to the POS system. So the POS information will pull into Data Central, but whatever you do in Data Central does not push back into your POS. With a salaried manager, you do have to ensure a few things. Number one, that their code is salary. Number two, that their primary job is marked as either assistant manager or general manager. The third thing that you have to do is you have to enter in the annual salary. Now, I do believe that the way that you are provided salary is an update on a monthly basis from the multi-unit manager. So if the multi-unit manager provides you a salary number that basically says, for example, in Columbus, that each restaurant that's budgeted for 3 salaried managers has a salary of $139.79 per day, you would then multiply that times 3, and then you would multiply that times 5 for your 3 salaried managers, and then you would multiply that times 52 weeks. Once you have that full number for your full number of salaried managers, you can then divide it by the actual number of salaried managers that you have. So if you actually have 3 salaried managers, you can then divide that number by 3, and that will give you the annual salary for that particular manager. The final step that you have to provide is a daily scheduled cost. And this allows for the schedule to ensure that it allocates the right dollar amounts to each manager for the days that they are scheduled. So I started with the $139.79. So that is the number that would be entered into here into the daily rate. Once you have entered your information, you can then hit OK to save. Once you've entered in your daily cost, you're going to want to ensure a couple of more items. Number one, that the employee has a schedule check mark here. This can be managed here, or it can be managed on the previous screen that we viewed with the entire employee list. For salaried managers, you have to manage the scheduled here. And for all corporate employees, you have to manage the schedule here. But for all other employees, all of your hourly employees, you can manage that on the previous screen. If you notice that employee is borrowed and that employee is not borrowed, you will note that you will not be able to make the changes to that employee since they are borrowed. You can either email your administrator and they can switch that employee to your restaurant, or your multi-unit manager has the ability to switch that employee from one restaurant to another. The reason is that way that there is above store leadership knowledge of an employee being transferred from one restaurant to another, permanently transferred. All of these exempt pieces should be managed through the POS system and not through Data Central. Additionally, if you have address changes or you have phone number or name changes, those too should be managed through your POS system, and then that will update Data Central for you. The next tab is the phone tab, where you have the ability to enter or access an employee's phone number. And then you have the ability to, under the status tab, to review that employee's status, which say there you had an employee who was active and then inactive and then terminated. All of their status changes would be shown in this section here. Next are the jobs that employee is available to work, and I will spend more time in detail on the jobs when I get to the hourly employees to show you this. You can ignore the I-9, W-4, flags, and custom fields for the time being. Under certifications and evaluations, if you like to, you have the ability to track training certifications for each employee. By selecting a training certification, selecting the date that employee was certified, it will populate when that employee's expiration of that certification takes place, and you will receive an alert letting you know that that employee is due to be recertified through your manager log. You can also enter a score, pass, fail, certification number, and any comments that you'd like behind that employee. This is just an additional feature that is in Data Central, but not a requirement to use at this point. Finally, there's a spot for breaks and deductions that you can ignore as well. I will now navigate to an hourly employee and touch on a couple of highlights. So once you access an hourly employee, highlight their name by selecting just to the left of their name, select Modify. You will notice that the employee information that was in the POS system was pulled over into Data Central. In order to modify an employee status and primary job, you can select and provide them a primary job, either production/cashier or server/cashier. Please note that all jobs for hourly employees are either production/cashier, server/cashier, or shift manager. You do not have to provide a primary job, but if that person primarily works in a certain position, it is ideal to provide one. Under the jobs, it will then show what that employee's jobs are available. Here, you have the ability to add a job for an employee by selecting the Add button and then selecting either production cashier or server cashier. Also note that in your POS system, you have the option to select either just production or just server. In Data Central, those jobs do not exist. Only production cashier and server / cashier exist. So you will need to make sure that anybody who has those jobs is modified in Data Central. Once you have added an additional job, you will need to enter in a pay rate for that particular employee, and then you would save your changes. Once you've made those changes, to cancel, hit cancel, or to save, hit OK. This concludes the employee maintenance piece of labor scheduling.